Chapter 5. He doesn't go back to the astronomy tower the next night, or the night after that. Neither does Regulus, James checks. That's how he spends his free time now, watching Regulus's name move around the map. It is absolutely and utterly pathetic, but that doesn't stop him. Hey, Earth to prongs? Sirius snaps his fingers impatiently in James's direction. James looks up from the fireplace to find his three friends staring at him. A beat passes. Sorry, what? Sirius huffs. Halloween party planning? Care to contribute? Not really. He sinks lower in his chair, tilting his head back to look up at the ceiling. Can't we just do what we did last year? Sirius gasps, scandalized. Can't we just... Remus, are you hearing this? James is only vaguely paying attention. He knows that someone says something else, and then he hears the muffled noises of shuffling feet and closing books. Sirius doesn't start shouting again, though, so he considers it a win. Remus's face appears above him. Hey, Moons, he says wearily. Remus worries his bottom lip between his teeth, eyes running James over like he's a potion that's not boiling right. Let's go, shall we? He says evenly. James arches his brow. Sorry, I can't go anywhere right now. I'm in the middle of some very important work. Oh, yeah? James nods, expression serious. Mm-hmm. Someone's got to count all the cracks in the ceiling. Remus smiles, reaching down and grabbing hold of James's wrist. Come on, you lump, let's go. If you're going to kidnap me, at least have the decency to tell me where we're going. James notices that Sirius has retreated to the other side of the common room with Mary. Pete nowhere to be seen. Remus clearly dismissed them. I'm not sure kidnappers are known for being particularly decent. Semantics, James mutters, allowing himself to be dragged through the portrait hole and into the hall on the other side. They walk in silence at first, James shoving his newly freed hands into his pockets and making a concerted effort not to look at anyone. The problem with being a generally sociable person is there's no efficient way to communicate to people to stay the fuck away from you when you're having a bad day. You didn't bring the cloak, James finds himself saying evenly. I did not. Very astute of you to notice. James huffs. You're gonna be okay when we get detention for walking around after curfew. Remus taps the prefect badge on his chest, sending James a sly look. Ah, James says wisely. The perks of being a sellout. Remus only rolls his eyes, continuing to lead the way. The nice thing about Mooney, well, one of several, is that he's not a bad person to not talk to. He's not uncomfortable with silence. He can let things be in a way that James has never been very good at. It doesn't bother Remus that you're sad, not because he doesn't care, because he understands that sometimes things can't be fixed. They just need to be felt. Snacks? James asks as they stroll up to the painting of the bowl of fruit, Remus tickling the pair with great dignity. Hot chocolate, Mooney corrects. James follows him through the portrait hole, smiling. He should have guessed. Hello, sirs. How can we have help, sirs? What be you needing, young masters? At least a dozen mini house elves swarm them. James never gets used to it. The Potters only have one house elf, Mimi, and she isn't anything like the Hogwarts elves. For starters, she's always giving James shit. Oh, the little master has lost both his arms. I see. That is why his bed is still unmade. Or, Master James seems to have lost his sight at school. That is why he cannot see the mess of his bedroom floor. 2 mugs of hot chocolate would be lovely if you wouldn't mind, Remus says, walking towards the nearest table. Is it okay if we stay for a bit? Not at all, sirs. Right away, sirs. Will you be wanting marshmallows, sirs? Remus turns to James, brows raised. Yeah, sure, thanks. He rubs the back of his neck uncomfortably as the little creatures scurry about. So we're staying, then? James asks, sitting down beside Remus. Remus nods. Figured it might help? Help? At that moment, 2 giant mugs overflowing with mountains of already melting marshmallows appear in front of them. Remus makes a pleased humming noise as he wraps his fingers around the one closest to him. God, I love that smell, he says happily. James takes hold of his own mug, pressing the warm porcelain between his hands and trying to ignore the dull ache that has been sitting in his chest for the past few days. You don't have to tell me what's wrong, Remus says eventually, causing James to look up. His friend is lowering his mug back onto the table, eyes soft, but he can see the concern in them. But something is wrong, isn't it? James stares back helplessly. But nothing else comes out. 100 words lodged in his throat. He sighs, running a hand over his face before swallowing them all back down with great difficulty. I'm just tired, is the best he can come up with. It's not a lie. The nightmares have made a return, except now sometimes Regulus is the one who's screaming, and James never makes it on time. Remus looks at him skeptically. James, you love Halloween. That's because Halloween is amazing. Remus sends him a pointed look that James chooses to ignore, becoming suddenly much more interested in his hot chocolate. You were barely paying attention earlier, Remus pushes on. Usually, I'd be trying to convince you and Sirius not to sneak a troll into the castle, or charm the sofa cushions to growl at people. James snorts. Those are both excellent ideas. And you'd have come up with them if you hadn't been so busy sulking. James groans, dropping his head into his hands. Part of him wants to tell Remus, is desperate to tell him, but another part of him is terrified. It was so easy when he could keep Regulus up in that tower, away from everything and everyone else, away from the rest of his life, so he didn't have to think about what he was doing. Listen, like I said, you don't have to tell me, okay? Remus says, reaching across the table and tapping his shoulder lightly, letting James know that he's there. But the thing is, well, you're usually kind of an open book. And since not one of us has any idea what's going on with you, it's thrown us for a bit of a loop. He pauses, especially Pads. James scrubs at his face before sitting back and meeting Remus's gaze. He told you to talk to me? Remus smirks. Please, he wanted to talk to you himself, but since he has the emotional awareness of a toddler, I figured that would be completely useless. James snorts. Probably right. Remus takes another sip of his hot chocolate, waiting for James. He's never hidden anything from them before. He knows that they do, Sirius and Remus especially. He sees it sometimes, in the tight way they hold their mouths or drop their eyes. He doesn't mind. He knows that it's harder for them, knows that part of his job, his role, is to be open, to be bright, to prove everything they think about the world wrong, to prove that there's good, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the worst thing doesn't happen. He sighs. He starts, voice going out on him almost immediately. He clears his throat and tries again. I think I hurt someone. He swallows with difficulty. I think I hurt someone and I don't know. Fuck, Remus, I don't know how to fix it. The obvious questions, the who and the how, don't come, and James is grateful. Well, assuming you didn't kill them? He waits for James to nod in the affirmative. Have you tried apologizing? James lets out a breath. I don't know how. I'm sorry is usually a good start. Yeah, James picks at the table. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's complicated. When a few minutes pass without Remus saying anything, James forces himself to look up. His friend is watching him thoughtfully, that little crease between his eyes he gets when he's thinking too hard. James braces himself for an onslaught of questions that he can't answer. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But he should have known better. This is Mooney, after all. Okay, the other boy says evenly. So just talk to them. James looks at him flatly, and Remus laughs. Look, despite what Sirius Black would have you believe, torturing yourself doesn't solve anything. It sure as hell doesn't do anything for the person you hurt. His chest aches, thinking about Regulus's face, standing there after he'd kissed him, so fucking scared. Maybe I'm just a coward. Remus makes a disbelieving noise. James, you are, without a doubt, one of the bravest people I've ever met. He rolls his eyes, but Remus isn't done. I swear, the first years think you are actually Godric Gryffindor. They do not. James can't quite keep a straight face. Please, their eyes get so wide when you walk by, I worry they're going to fall out. But, he shrugs, a smile in the corner of his mouth, if they're gonna idolize someone, there are worse people they could choose. That gets a proper laugh out of James. Remus sips smugly at his hot chocolate before reaching out across the table to squeeze his shoulder. Talk to them, okay? James nods slowly, playing with his mug for a minute before speaking again. Listen, speaking of apologies, I've been meaning to, His hand goes to the back of his neck nervously. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable the other day, in the library. He sees Remus's posture tense as he carefully raises his mug to his lips, taking his time. I know. It's late, the candles burning low as one or two of the house elves move around them, preparing for tomorrow. I'm sorry, he says, when Remus continues to sit there silently. His friend lets out a breath. I got that, you don't need to be sorry, he says awkwardly, like his words are climbing over hurdles just to make it out of his mouth. You didn't do anything wrong, I just didn't want anyone to know. The last words are almost a whisper. James nods. I know, and they won't. He doesn't try to convince him not to worry, not to take it seriously. Not after the way it went last time. Thank you. Remus clears his throat and speaks more forcibly. Thank you for being so okay. With me. For the first time, James has the smallest inkling that they may not be talking about the same thing. Sure, he says anyway. Of course. They finish their hot chocolates in silence. He has every intention of following Mooney's advice. Really, he does. Except it turns out Regulus is almost constantly with people. Between classes, between meals, at meals. He seems to specifically spend his time with Crouch and Rosier, who, personally, James thinks are a particularly gross pair of companions to attach yourself to, but that's none of his business. He spends a lot of his time trying to figure out how to get to Regulus on his own, and comparably little time thinking about what he's actually going to say, what he wants. Those questions are hard and twist his stomach up, and if he thinks about them too long, he loses his nerve. So he doesn't. He ignores them, a time-tested method that has served him well in the past. In the meantime, he is back to being fully invested in party planning. We'll get the boost from Rosmerta this weekend when we go into Hogsmeade, he says, running down the to-do list in front of him. You mean Padfoot will get the booze? Peter doesn't quite manage to hide his bitterness. Sirius, who had been lying on his back, turns over at that, propping his head up on his hands and grinning. Jealous, wormy? Peter blushes. I told you I don't fancy her. James tries and fails to smother a snort, earning him a sharp glare from Peter. What? I'm sorry. He holds his hands up in surrender, but you do turn into a tomato every time her name is mentioned. Listen, Pete, I can get you in there. She's not a complicated woman. Sirius, really? Remus asks flatly. Don't be a creep. James sees something flicker across Sirius's face, like hurt, before he's able to mask it with a grin. Only trying to help. Right, okay. James presses forward. So booze is accounted for. Hagrid is supplying us with a shit ton of pumpkins, and I'm pretty sure I figured out how to charm the ceiling to flash with lightning and not drench us all in torrential downpour. Is that why the sofas were soggy the other day? Peter asks. No comment. Moony, you've got music covered? Of course. Hey, Sirius sits up, running a hand nervously through his hair. Remus turns to him. My uncle sent me these records. I don't know if you want to take a look at them, or... He trails off, shrugging in a way that is oddly self-conscious. I don't know if they're really any good. I just thought, if you were looking for something new... Remus blinks, holding Sirius's gaze. Yeah, I'd like that. Maybe you can show me later? Sirius nods, a little overeager. Yeah, cool, of course. James's eyes bounce between his two friends before going back to the list in front of him. Pete, you're on snack duty. I'm gonna clean Honeydukes the fuck out. That a boy. James leans forward to punch him playfully in the arm. That just leaves... Oh wait, James? Marlene appears, leaning over the back of the sofa. Do you have the plays we worked on yesterday? I was hoping to run them over. Her eyes spot the parchment in James's hand and the other boys around him. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting a plotting session? We don't plot, Remus says indignantly. Well, I mean, Peter's head wobbles from side to side. We do plot a little. James rolls his eyes, tossing the parchment in his hand to the side. Yeah, Mar, just give me a sec. It's upstairs. Trying to get on Frank's good side? He hears Sirius ask her as he heads for the stairs. More like I'm trying to make sure I don't get shut up by your little brother. It's a blessing, really, that he's already around the corner at that point, because he isn't sure he manages to keep the grimace off his face. So, really, it's Marlene's fault that the first thing he does when he gets up to the room is grab the map, tapping it open on his bed and scanning for the familiar name. He's expecting Regulus to be in his room by now. It's 10:30, 11, maybe in the common room with Crouch and Rosier. Except he isn't. Not in either of those places. James feels his breath hitch slightly, eyes going to the astronomy tower, but he isn't there either. Frank and Alice are, though. James snorts. Good for them. He keeps looking, not sure where else Regulus could be. He runs over every inch of the castle before he sees him. James taps the map closed, dropping to his knees to pull the invisibility cloak out from under his bed. He'll have to come up with some excuse to explain his disappearance to the others later. He has no idea what it'll be, but he doesn't bother trying to figure it out now. Marlene is still talking to Sirius when he gets back downstairs. Remus reading while Pete goes over the party list. James slips out the portrait hole as the fifth-year girl slips in. It's cold out. James didn't think to grab a jumper. He stashes the cloak in a spot he knows by the Whomping Willow before jogging down to the Quidditch pitch. He sees the snitch first, tiny and gold, blinking in the moonlight, and then, out of the dark, Regulus. James walks onto the field, watching Regulus let the ball go again, watching him wait for it to speed away before he starts doing laps around the pitch. The absolute lunatic. James considers calling up, but decides against it. Instead, he sits down on the grass and waits. It's incredible, really, watching Regulus find his target even in the near pitch black. James only catches glimpses of him here and there. The rest of the time he blends in with the sky, disappearing into the stars. Fitting, James thinks. His stomach lurches a little when Regulus finally starts to come down, the calm that had washed over him while he was watching quickly falling away. Regulus doesn't see him at first, landing gracefully and pausing for a moment, looking at the snitch in his hands. James waits, wondering what it is that's caught Regulus's attention, and then, watching as the other boy carefully slips the ball into his pocket. I can't believe you're stealing a snitch, James says, stepping forward. Regulus jerks around, hand going right for his wand like it had the night James surprised him in the tower, always ready for an attack. Even in the dim light, James can see the surprise on Regulus's face before he quickly locks it down, expression becoming flat, unreadable, and he knows he should say something, now that they're here, knows that this was the whole point of coming, but for a minute, all he can do is stare. Regulus is windswept, still breathing heavy from flying, his gray eyes filling with the moon. Regulus drops his broom, arms crossing over his chest, same blank expression on his face. Lovely night for some queer bashing, huh? James physically rears back at the spite that manages to bleed into Regulus's voice, despite his attempts to keep it level. What? Don't take too long, yeah? I have things to do. Oh, and if you could try not to get blood on my jumper, I'd appreciate it. I'm quite fond of this one. James is still reeling. What? Do you really think I would? But then something else hits him. Has someone done that to you? Regulus's mask slips ever so slightly, and even though he pulls it back, James still sees it. Still knows what it means. His hands curling into fists. Who? The word is practically a snarl. Regulus doesn't say anything, doesn't move. Who was it, Reg? He takes a step forward, and that seems to wake Regulus up. Oh, leave off it. He sounds irritated. I don't need you to defend my fucking honor, Potter. Which isn't nearly good enough, because the idea that someone had done that to Regulus. So, Regulus's eyes run him up and down, sneering in a way that James hasn't seen in a while. Not here to mess me up, then? Just here to, what, talk? He says the last word with a great deal of contempt. I'd rather the beating, if I'm being honest. James is still too busy trying to get his anger under control to come up with any kind of response to that. I'll save you the trouble, Regulus goes on, holding his hand out over his broom and summoning it into his palm without uttering a word. You're not gay, you didn't even touch me. You're welcome. Now, if you don't mind, I'm tired and I want to go to bed. The problem is, well, one of many, James thinks, is that he's not much of a planner. Sure, pranks and parties he does all right with. Though, if he's honest, that's really Remus's influence. James has always been more of a gut feeling kind of person. Act now, think later. So you see, he isn't thinking when he reaches out, frustrated with Regulus for walking away again, for not giving him a second to breathe, or think. Mostly he just wants him to wait, but he doesn't have a plan. He isn't thinking, he's following his gut. So when Regulus stumbles back towards him, he doesn't know how his hands find their way to the other boy's face, doesn't remember deciding to move forward, to press it into him, lips crashing together. This kiss is different. This time, James feels all of it, every inch of his body humming as Regulus opens his mouth and lets him inside. All James can think is yes. Yes, this. Right here. Stay right here, where I can keep you safe. Regulus's nose is cold, but the rest of him is still so warm, and James can feel it pouring into him, filling his chest. There are universes in this kiss. It is big, gigantic. His hands slide into Regulus's hair. He smells like fall, like Quidditch. James barely registers it at first, the hand on his chest, flat and pushing. Not hard, but persistent. Stubborn. Eventually forcing a space between them that James doesn't want. Their breathing fills the quiet, their heads bowed close, but no longer touching. Regulus's hand flat on his chest. No, Regulus says finally. No? James instantly steps back. Regulus shakes his head, reaching down and picking up his broom by hand this time. I'm not doing this. He turns around and starts walking back towards the castle. What? James demands, following after. You started this. Regulus lets out a huff. I didn't, actually. You did. Forcing yourself uninvited and unwanted into my life. At least I was drunk. What the fuck is your excuse? James ignores the last question. If you don't want me there, you would have gotten rid of me and you know it. Still to Regulus's back. I tried. Bollocks. Merlin, keep your voice down, would you? I'd rather not have to deal with Filch catching us. Which, really, Regulus should have known was a mistake. Oh no, wouldn't want to get in trouble. Spoil that spotless record. James purposefully raises his voice to a near shout. It would be terrible if someone were to come out and see two students out of bed. Shut up, Regulus whips around, pulling James up short. Salazar, what is it you want, Potter? Which is an annoying and unfair question, James thinks, because quite clearly he has no idea. I want to talk. About? Regulus demands, thoroughly exasperated. James returns his tone. I don't know, Reg. This. What happened in the tower? Listen, No, Regulus says forcibly. No. See, this is exactly what I meant when I said I didn't want to do this. James falters for a moment. That Regulus hadn't meant to kiss him, hadn't crossed James' mind before, which he suddenly realizes is maybe a little self-absorbed, because Regulus had been drunk. Except the look on his face afterwards had made James so sure. And then just now, that kiss had been meant. On both sides. He's certain. Almost. Mostly. Maybe. He drags a hand through his hair. Okay, he says finally. If you don't want... Sorry. I should have asked before His heart is doing this weird thing where it stops every time he tries to get a word out. And for a second, Regulus seems to soften. Oh, honestly, bloody Gryffindors. That's not what I'm saying. James just looks at him, not trusting himself to speak. Really, James, what do you want? What were you hoping to accomplish here? James sighs. I don't know. Brilliant. Listen, you ask a lot of questions for someone who doesn't give a lot of answers, Reg. Surprisingly, the younger boy seems to accept that, gray eyes intent on James. How do you think this goes, Potter? You think we're, what, gonna walk down the corridor holding hands? Snog in the library? James's chest aches. I don't know, sure, if that's what you want. Regulus stares back at him, blinking before a cold laugh bursts out of him. Jesus Christ! He turns away from James, but doesn't start walking again, broom forgotten on the ground as he brings his hands up to his face. They stand there for a minute, just like that. James entirely unsure of what to do with that reaction. You know what your problem is? Regulus is finally turning back around. Nobody has really fucked you up yet. And they're going to, one day. But it's not going to be me. I don't want that job. Give it to someone else. Reg, but he's on a roll now. Have you ever even considered how people would react? How absolutely absurd everything I just suggested is? Have you thought about, I don't know, your parents? Which takes James by surprise, because no, he hasn't. Not at all. I know. They're perfect and lovely and selfless, but they're still purebloods, still from old families, and you're their only son. You really think they'll be okay with you being a poof? Or, he laughs again, all twisted and sharp, or my brother, who may have disagreed with our parents on many things, but not this? Reg, James tries again, stepping closer, not entirely sure that Regulus is taking full breaths in between his words. Which is to say nothing of the fact that the boy you have chosen to fuck everyone off over is me. What's wrong with you? He doesn't think about it. Of course he doesn't. The words just coming out of him. Because he means them. But for some reason, those are the words that break through. The words that get Regulus to slow down for one bloody second. Not that they do anything to soften the hard look in his eyes. Don't act dumb, James, he says finally, sounding tired. It's beneath you. James shakes his head, taking in a shaky breath. Look, you're right. I haven't thought about any of that. Regulus exhales, looking about ready to bolt again, so James talks fast. I just thought, listen, you want to know what I want? I want to talk to you, not just right now, but all the time. I miss you. I miss talking to you. I haven't been sleeping. James admits, and when Regulus looks at him questioningly, he explains. I have these nightmares, but you? I don't know, being around you, it made me feel okay again. It made me feel, safe? And you're right, my life has been easy, I know that, but I've seen enough to understand that good things are rare, and you're... He looks at him, trying to lay all the thoughts he can't articulate bare into the space between them. You're good, Reg. The other boy just stares back at him, eyes wide, and James feels like his chest is going to burst open, his ribs aching in his skin. James, think about it, okay? James cuts him off, too afraid of how sad he sounds. Come to the astronomy tower tomorrow night. Regulus is impossibly still, a deer in headlights, looking at James like he's never seen him before. James swallows with difficulty. He's too much. He knows he is. Always has been. Slowly, Regulus nods. Okay, James exhales, mostly speaking to himself. Okay, good. This time, when Regulus starts walking away, James doesn't try to stop him. The wind feels colder now, James shivering as he wraps his arms around his chest. He wonders if everything will feel colder now, after Regulus. The next day is a bit of a blur. James doesn't get much sleep, but that's par for the course at this point. He looks for Regulus at breakfast, but doesn't see him. Marlene gives him shit about not coming back with the plays, and Sirius demands a full explanation. Just needed some fresh air. Fresh air? Is that some kind of euphemism I'm not aware of? James just shrugs, doing his best not to meet Remus's knowing stare. Prongs, hey, Sirius, don't you have to show me those records your uncle sent you? James sends out a silent thank you to the universe for Remus Bloody Lupin. He drags himself from class to class all day, retreating to his room when it's over and doing his best not to absolutely lose it. James? Peter comes up at one point. James is lying on his bed, tossing his snitch up and down, curtains drawn. You okay? Fine, not feeling well. Oh, okay. Do you want something or... I just want to sleep. Right, yeah, okay. He listens as the door closes, then grabs the invisibility cloak and heads for the tower. He waits facing the door, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He should have brought something to do, to distract him. Not that anything could have. Still. It'll be okay if Regulus doesn't come. It will. Better, actually. Probably. So... His knees bob up and down impatiently as he runs over every stupid thing he said the night before, and every stupid thing he didn't say but absolutely should have. He doesn't know how he got himself here, or how something he didn't even know he wanted a week ago feels so important. He sighs, dropping his head into his hands and pulling at his hair. Fuck, he thinks. Fuck, he's not coming, is he? But that's okay, he reminds himself. Better even. It's pathetic how quickly his head snaps up when he finally hears the door open, how instantly he fills with warmth at the sight of Regulus, stiff and uncomfortable, but here. So very here. James feels himself still for the first time all day. Because at least if he's here, they can deal with this. At least if he's here, then James isn't on his own. It's several moments before Regulus clears his throat, standing at the door, eyeing James warily. No one can know. James blinks, trying to catch up. Okay, he says slowly. I mean it, Regulus pushes on. Not my brother, not Lupin, not Pettigrew. Whatever we do here, whatever this is, nobody knows. James nods. Okay, nobody knows. Regulus doesn't say anything else, just keeps standing across the tower, looking like he's ready to run. Reg, James says eventually, voice soft, a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Come here. It takes him a minute, so much going on behind those eyes, but eventually he moves forward, stiff and overly studied, like he was when he was drunk, thinking too much, trying too hard. He stops in front of James, gray eyes even more intense up close, and James honestly doesn't know where he gets the gall, but he reaches up and hooks his fingers through Regulus's belt loops, tugging him forward. He doesn't really think Regulus will do it, doesn't think he'll follow, but he does, sliding onto James's lap, and oh, James likes that. Aloof, proper Regulus in his lap. He runs his hands up his back, coming to hold his face, thumbs brushing his cheeks. And he sees it then, this close, sees the fear and uncertainty and softness that Regulus is always trying so hard to hide. There you are, he says, almost a whisper, before pulling lightly on Regulus's hair, exposing his neck. He leans in and presses his mouth to the delicate skin, feeling Regulus's pulse race as the breath punches out of him. You're going to be insufferable, aren't you? Regulus says. James feels the words vibrate against his mouth. Yes, he says between kisses. God, yes. Chapter endnotes. Now, if only Remus and Sirius could get together, am I right? As always, thank you so much for your comments. Always interested to know what you guys think. Reader note, thank you for listening. I will try to do chapter 6 tomorrow. Yeah, chapter 6. So yeah, see you next episode. Thank you for listening.